They say money talks. But sometimes, money doesn't just talk, it screams. Imagine this: a public servant, an elected representative, starting with what's widely reported as essentially nothing, suddenly accumulating a fortune that rockets into the tens of millions of dollars. Not over a lifetime of entrepreneurial genius, not through generations of inherited wealth, but in a relatively short span, while actively serving in public office. Sounds like a plotline ripped straight from a political thriller, doesn't it? A rags to riches tale, almost too good, or perhaps too unbelievable to be true. But what if that too good to be true scenario doesn't trigger applause, but instead triggers a cacophony of alarm bells? What if that sudden, explosive reported wealth doesn't just raise eyebrows among the public, but also ignites the serious, probing questions of the most powerful investigative bodies in the country? Because right now, as you watch this, that's precisely what's happening. The House of Representatives. Federal agencies. They're not just vaguely looking into things. They've launched full-scale, official probes. This isn't just a political rumor or a partisan attack anymore. It's a documented, unfolding investigation into the financial affairs of a sitting member of Congress. And for most Americans, who understand the grind, who live paycheck to paycheck, who struggle valiantly to save even a fraction of what's being discussed, the idea that a politician's reported wealth could potentially balloon from $0 to $30 million during their public tenure, only to now face intense, multi-layered scrutiny from both legislative and federal authorities. It's a revelation that changes everything. It asks a fundamental, uncomfortable question that cuts to the core of our democracy. When those we elect to represent us accrue such staggering, rapid fortunes, what exactly are they doing? What hidden mechanisms might be at play that the average citizen simply doesn't understand? And more importantly, what truth is about to be unearthed? And how will it reshape our understanding of power, politics, and who truly benefits from the system? Because what's starting to unravel isn't just about one person or one reported fortune. It's about the very principles of accountability, transparency, and public trust in the highest offices of our nation. And for better or worse, most people have absolutely no idea what's actually about to happen. We live in an age where information, and unfortunately misinformation, spreads at light speed. Every rumor, every slight, every controversy can become a trending topic within minutes. But some stories, no matter how extraordinary, no matter how potentially seismic, can still manage to simmer beneath the surface, debated in the digital ether, whispered in political circles, until the precise confluence of events brings them to a definitive boil. For years, varying reports and allegations concerning Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's finances have circulated, often dismissed by some as partisan noise, yet persistently questioned by others. But whispers don't trigger federal investigations. Reports don't move the House of Representatives to launch official, weighty probes. What does is a persistent, undeniable pattern of unanswered questions, a perceived discrepancy that simply refuses to be silenced by standard explanations. Let's rewind and trace the narrative as it's been publicly presented and, crucially, as it's now being investigated. The story suggests a financial journey that, for many, defies conventional political trajectories and common economic sense. We're talking about an individual entering the realm of public service, whose initial public financial disclosures, documents meant to provide a baseline of transparency, reportedly reflected a modest, or even negligible, net worth. This, in itself, is not at all unusual. Many politicians, when they first embark on their careers, come from diverse backgrounds, not necessarily from inherited wealth or high-flying corporate executive positions. In fact, this perceived relatability, this connection to the struggles of everyday constituents, is often seen as a significant strength, a testament to their roots in the communities they aim to serve. They understand the average person's financial struggles because they've lived them. But then, according to numerous reports and the allegations that have spurred these probes, something dramatically shifts. The very public records, those crucial financial disclosure forms, the linchpins of governmental transparency, begin to paint a starkly different and increasingly perplexing picture. What's reported isn't a gradual, incremental growth that might logically come from a comfortable congressional salary, coupled with prudent, long-term investments, or even a successful, well-documented book deal. Instead, what has been alleged is an acceleration of wealth, an upward trajectory that, according to some assessments, catapults her estimated net worth into a truly staggering range, reportedly reaching or exceeding $30 million. From essentially zero to $30 million. Let that figure, and the speed at which it allegedly accumulated, truly sink in for a moment. For the vast majority of us, building wealth is a slow, painstaking, often brutal process. It involves years, even decades, of dedicated saving, careful investing, often taking significant entrepreneurial risks, and working tirelessly to compound small gains into larger ones. We understand the relentless grind. We understand that a congressional salary, while undeniably comfortable and secure, isn't typically designed to be the fast track to multimillionaire status, certainly not in a relatively short period of time. So, when figures like $30 million are thrown around, particularly in relation to a public servant who entered office with far less, it naturally ignites a powerful, unified chorus of questions from the public. How does this happen? What precisely changed? What are the mechanisms behind such a rapid financial metamorphosis? The core of the initial mystery isn't merely the impressive numerical sum itself, but the speed, the scale, and the perceived incongruity of the reported accumulation within the context of a public servant's income and typical financial opportunities. It's the kind of financial expansion that usually accompanies wildly successful tech innovators, seasoned venture capitalists with decades of market experience, or entrepreneurs who build global empires from scratch. It is not, typically, the expected financial profile of a sitting member of Congress within a relatively brief tenure. To truly grasp the weight and urgency of these questions, we need to consider the standard, legitimate pathways for wealth accumulation for individuals in public office. They earn a fixed, publicly known salary. They might, legitimately, have pre-existing investments, often managed in blind trusts to proactively prevent conflicts of interest. They might author books that become bestsellers, or deliver highly compensated speeches to private groups, activities that are generally disclosed in their financial filings. But the jump being discussed here suggests something beyond these ordinary, well-understood avenues. It suggests a powerful, perhaps multifaceted financial engine, or a series of highly significant, highly lucrative financial events that have yet to be fully and publicly reconciled in a way that unequivocally satisfies the increasingly intense scrutiny from watchdog groups, the media, and now, critically, official government investigators. Consider the intricate political ecosystem in which these individuals operate. Politicians are, by the very nature of their role, constantly under a microscope. Their personal finances, their campaign donors, their professional and even personal associations, these are all subjects of intense public interest and, more importantly, strict legal and ethical review. The very purpose and foundation of our financial disclosure laws exist to ensure that the public has a clear understanding of who holds potential financial sway over their elected representatives, and whether crucial decisions are being made primarily for the public good, or, potentially, for personal financial gain. When a financial picture becomes opaque, or, as alleged here, appears to deviate dramatically and rapidly from expected norms and patterns, those very disclosure laws suddenly become the singular, unyielding center of intense official focus. The crucial point here, and it bears repeating, is not to declare judgment or to assume guilt. Instead, it is to acknowledge the profound disparity, the perceived financial anomaly, that has fueled this firestorm of public and official inquiry. The public, and now official federal and legislative investigators, are grappling with a financial narrative that doesn't immediately align with common understandings of political income and wealth generation. It's a complex puzzle with many missing or obscured pieces. And every piece of this puzzle, from the initial reports of her modest financial beginnings to the current estimated net worth and the specific alleged sources, contributes to the increasingly urgent picture now under official, multi-agency examination. What we are witnessing, therefore, is the collision of public perception, official reporting, the sometimes murky and labyrinthine waters of political finance, and the relentless demand for accountability in a representative democracy. The narrative of wealth accumulation, in this specific context, becomes less about individual success and more, far more, about systemic public accountability and the integrity of our institutions. For the average American, who meticulously budgets, plans, and struggles to make sense of their own finances, this reported trajectory of a public official's wealth feels not just aspirational, but frankly, bewildering and deeply unsettling. It raises fundamental questions about fairness, about the true application of financial rules, and about whether some people simply operate by a different, more advantageous financial playbook than everyone else. And it is precisely this bewilderment, this profound sense of discrepancy, that has ignited the powerful probes now officially underway. This isn't merely a fishing expedition born from a viral tweet or an unsubstantiated blog post. When the House of Representatives and various federal agencies formally launch official probes into the financial affairs of a sitting member of Congress, it signifies a highly specific, coordinated activation of immense institutional power, legal protocols, and investigative resources. It means that there's a sufficient foundation of substantive concern, often fueled by credible allegations, detailed financial analysis, or unusual patterns detected in public records, to warrant a comprehensive, deep dive that goes far beyond surface-level questioning. For the average American citizen, the inner workings and complexities of such high-stakes government investigations can often feel like a bewildering labyrinth, shrouded in legal jargon and bureaucratic processes. But understanding these mechanisms is absolutely crucial to fully grasping the gravity of the stakes involved, not just for the individual, but for the entire system of governance. First, let's unpack the nature of the House probe. This typically falls under the purview of the House Ethics Committee or a similar investigative body established by Congress. These are non-advisory groups that merely offer suggestions. They are powerful, quasi-judicial entities with significant authority. They possess the power to launch formal investigations, to issue subpoenas for documents, such as bank records, tax returns, and business contracts, and compel testimony from witnesses, including the member of Congress themselves, their staff, family members, and business associates, and ultimately, to recommend a range of sanctions. These sanctions can vary widely, from a public letter of reprimand, to a formal censure, a public statement of disapproval by the entire House, to recommendations for fines, removal from committee assignments, or, in the most severe cases, a recommendation for expulsion from Congress. The core focus of a House ethics investigation often centers on alleged violations of House rules, breaches of ethical conduct standards, conflicts of interest, and, critically, noncompliance with rigorous financial disclosure requirements. For a politician whose reported personal wealth has seen such a dramatic and rapid increase, the Ethics Committee would meticulously scrutinize every detail of their annual financial disclosure forms. These mandatory forms require members of Congress to list virtually all of their assets, liabilities, income sources, including salaries, investments, honoraria, and business interests, and significant financial transactions. Any significant discrepancies between these filings and other available information, any unexplained omissions, or any substantial, undeclared windfalls immediately become glaring red flags, triggering deeper scrutiny. Imagine, if you will, a team of highly specialized forensic accountants, auditors, and legal experts poring over your most intricate tax returns and financial statements, but with the added, formidable power of a legislative body behind them. They are relentlessly searching for the precise origins of the money, meticulously tracking its movement, and rigorously verifying if every single transaction, every income stream, every investment, is not only properly documented and fully disclosed, but also, and most crucially, legal, ethical, and fully compliant with both congressional rules and broader federal statutes. They would be asking a cascade of penetrating questions. Were there any undisclosed business ventures or partnerships that contributed to this wealth? Were there unusually profitable or seemingly fortuitous investment gains that coincide with legislative activity? Were there any dealings that blurred the lines between public duty and private financial benefit, or that gave the appearance of doing so? The threshold for concern here is often not just definitive proof of illegality, but also the very appearance of impropriety, which, in the realm of public trust, can be just as, if not more, damaging as actual wrongdoing. Beyond the internal congressional review, there are the federal agencies. This is where the implications can potentially escalate to an even more serious level, moving beyond ethical violations to potential criminal charges. Depending on the nature and specificity of the allegations, various federal law enforcement and regulatory bodies could become involved. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, for instance, might initiate investigations into potential criminal violations such as fraud, money laundering, bribery, or public corruption. The Department of Justice, DOJ, as the nation's chief law enforcement agency, could then pursue formal charges if sufficient evidence of criminal activity is found through these investigations. Furthermore, the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, could launch its own parallel examination to ensure accurate tax compliance related to the reported wealth, scrutinizing whether all income was declared and all applicable taxes paid. The fundamental challenge for these dedicated investigators is not just the identification of a large sum of money, but the meticulous, painstaking process of tracing its precise origins, validating its legitimacy, and verifying its compliance with a vast web of federal laws and ethical codes. Every single transaction, every bank record, every business deal, every contract, every communication could be meticulously examined, cross-referenced, and analyzed by teams of experts. This is not a swift or superficial process. These probes can often take many months, stretching into years, and they are inherently exhaustive because the potential consequences for public officials, and for the integrity of the government itself, are so profoundly significant. For the middle-class citizen watching this unfolding drama, the questions go far beyond just the intricate legalities. They touch upon the very core idea of fairness, equal application of the law, and whether the system is truly just. If an ordinary, hard-working person were to suddenly acquire a $30 million unexplained fortune, they would almost certainly face immediate, intense, and intrusive scrutiny from the IRS and other relevant agencies. The undeniable expectation, and indeed the principle of justice, is that those in positions of immense public power should be held to an even higher standard of financial transparency and ethical conduct, not a lower, more lenient one. The initiation of these probes, therefore, represents a critical, necessary mechanism for maintaining that vital standard, and for beginning the arduous process of rebuilding public trust when it has been severely shaken. They are a declaration, loud and clear, that no one, regardless of their political position, their power, or their public profile, is definitively above the law. This isn't merely about one politician. It's not just about one specific investigation. It's not even solely about one reported $30 million fortune. What is truly at stake here is profoundly larger, more existential. It's about the underlying health, stability, and legitimacy of our entire democratic system and the absolutely essential, symbiotic relationship between the governed and those who have been entrusted to govern them. When allegations of rapid, unexplained, or ethically questionable wealth accumulation surface in the public sphere, and when those allegations escalate to the point where official, multi-pronged probes are launched, it sends seismic ripples far beyond the specific individuals involved. It casts a long, often corrosive shadow over the entire political class, over the institution of Congress, and over government itself, inevitably fueling widespread public cynicism, political polarization, and ultimately, a dangerous erosion of the public's foundational trust. Think about this from the perspective of the average American citizen, the middle-class family striving for financial stability. They work incredibly hard, often juggling multiple jobs, meticulously budgeting every dollar, diligently paying their taxes, and navigating a complex, unforgiving financial world where every single cent must be accounted for. They observe politicians, who frequently claim to be representing their interests, who often campaign on platforms of economic fairness, seemingly operating by a different, more advantageous, and often more opaque set of financial rules. When a substantial and rapid wealth increase is reported for a public official, and the explanations for that increase are either conspicuously absent, demonstrably insufficient, or deliberately shrouded in financial complexity and legal obfuscation, it creates an immediate and profound sense of disconnect. How can they get away with that, accumulate so much, so quickly, when I struggle so intensely, so constantly, just to make ends meet and build even a modest nest egg? Is the silent, yet incredibly powerful and often deeply resentful, question that millions of Americans ask themselves. This sentiment, this perceived inequality, is an incredibly corrosive force within a democracy. Historically, political scandals, particularly those that involve allegations of financial impropriety, corruption, or self-enrichment, have had a deeply profound and lasting impact on public perception and trust. From the scandalous Teapot Dome affair in the 1920s, which exposed widespread corruption in the executive branch, to the seismic impact of Watergate in the 1970s, which led to the resignation of a president, from the abscom bribery sting operations of the 1980s, which ensnared members of Congress, to more recent congressional ethics investigations that touch on everything from insider trading to campaign finance abuses. Each of these events, these revelations, chips away relentlessly at the public's already fragile faith in the integrity, honesty, and disinterested service of their leaders. Each instance, whether it ultimately results in a criminal conviction, a formal sanction, or merely prolonged, uncomfortable scrutiny, reinforces a dangerous narrative that politics is fundamentally a game rigged for the powerful and the privileged, that self-enrichment is rampant and goes unpunished, and that true, meaningful accountability for those at the top is a rare and often elusive phenomenon. This relentless erosion of trust, this creeping cynicism, has tangible and often devastating consequences for a functioning democracy. It frequently leads to lower voter turnout, a palpable increase in political polarization as citizens retreat into echo chambers of distrust, and a general, dangerous disengagement from the democratic process itself. When people become convinced that their leaders are fundamentally corrupt, inherently self-serving, or operating outside the established rules, they begin to lose faith not just in those individuals, but in the entire system itself. They start to view government not as a collective instrument for the common good, a mechanism for solving shared problems, but rather as a tool or a conduit for the personal gain of a select, often untouchable few. And in an era already rife with profound social divisions, economic anxieties, and widespread distrust of institutions, anything that further destabilizes this fundamental, precious faith in representative government represents a clear and present danger to the very fabric of our society. The very concept of public service itself, particularly for an elected official, intrinsically implies a profound commitment to the common good, a willingness to prioritize the welfare of constituents, often at considerable personal sacrifice, or at the very least, at the expense of personal financial advancement. While no reasonable person expects politicians to take a literal vow of poverty, there is an unspoken, deeply ingrained societal expectation of transparency, ethical conduct, and financial moderation. A sudden, massive, and rapidly accumulated influx of personal wealth for a public official, especially if its origins remain unclear, appear controversial, or are difficult to explain in simple, straightforward terms, directly clashes with this fundamental ideal of public service. It inevitably forces people to question the true motives behind every policy decision made, every vote cast, every piece of legislation supported, and every public statement issued. Are they doing this for us, the people they claim to represent, or are they doing it primarily for themselves, for their own financial benefit, or for the benefit of their inner circle? Becomes an omnipresent, nagging question that infiltrates every aspect of political discourse. Furthermore, these high-profile investigations, regardless of their specific outcome, serve another critical function. They shine an unsparing, harsh light on the existing regulatory frameworks and enforcement mechanisms designed to prevent such impropriety. They compel a national conversation. Are our current financial disclosure laws truly strong enough to capture all relevant financial activities? Are congressional ethics committees sufficiently empowered, adequately resourced, and truly independent enough to conduct thorough, impartial investigations? Is the overall governmental oversight truly robust and capable of preventing corruption, or are there significant loopholes, deliberate ambiguities, or enforcement weaknesses that powerful individuals can exploit with relative impunity? The very act of initiating these probes forces a critical, often uncomfortable, reevaluation of the entire system designed to prevent corruption and ensure public accountability. It forces a public, democratic conversation about whether the guardians and stewards of our democracy are themselves above reproach, or if they too are susceptible to the siren call of power, privilege, and the immense temptations of money. For the middle class, this isn't merely an abstract political drama playing out in Washington. It connects directly, viscerally, and often emotionally to their daily struggles and their profound sense of economic fairness. When politicians are widely perceived to be enriching themselves dramatically and rapidly in ways that seem opaque or questionable, it breeds deep resentment and a feeling of being exploited. It compels people to question why their taxes are so high, why critical social programs are often underfunded or cut, why economic opportunities seem so scarce and challenging for them and their families, while simultaneously, those in positions of power appear to accumulate vast fortunes with seemingly effortless ease. It powerfully feeds into and validates the deeply troubling narrative that the entire system is fundamentally rigged, that the deck is stacked against the average citizen, and that they are consistently on the losing end of an unfair game. The core principle that these ongoing probes are intended to uphold, or at the very least attempt to reaffirm, is the sacred notion that public office is, first and foremost, a public trust. And trust, once severely broken, once eroded by cynicism and unanswered questions, is an incredibly difficult, almost insurmountable, thing to repair. The future stability, legitimacy, and long-term health of our political system relies fundamentally on a credible, transparent, and ultimately decisive response to these pervasive questions. It requires a clear, unambiguous demonstration that accountability is not just a hollow slogan trotted out during election cycles, but a living, breathing, lived reality for absolutely everyone, and especially for those who occupy the highest echelons of power. The ongoing investigations into the reported wealth are not just about one individual's bank account or one person's political career. They are about powerfully reaffirming the foundational values of integrity, transparency, ethical conduct, and selfless public service that are supposed to fundamentally underpin and legitimize our entire political framework. If these essential values are seen to be compromised, circumvented, or openly disregarded, the long-term consequences for our collective future are far more profound and devastating than any individual scandal could ever be. We've journeyed through the dramatic narrative of reported rapid wealth accumulation, dissected the intensive, multi-layered scrutiny now underway, and explored the profound, often unsettling implications for public trust and the integrity of our democratic institutions. Now, as these complex and critical probes continue to unfold, it's imperative that we peer into the future. What precisely happens when these official investigations, launched by the powerful House of Representatives and various federal agencies, finally reach their respective conclusions? It is absolutely crucial to understand that these investigations are not preordained to a specific, singular outcome. They are rigorous, fact-finding processes, and like any complex process, they possess multiple potential endings, each with its own set of profound ramifications, not just for the individual under scrutiny, but for the broader political system and the trust citizens place in it. For the middle-class citizen, understanding these various potential futures is absolutely key to engaging intelligently with the political process. It's not just about awaiting a sensational verdict. It's about observing, understanding, and potentially influencing the fundamental evolution of the system itself. If true accountability is clearly demonstrated through the rigorous process and its outcome, it can begin, slowly and incrementally, to restore some of that desperately needed public trust. If, however, the outcome is widely perceived as a whitewash, a cover-up, or demonstrably inadequate given the scale of the questions raised, it will inevitably deepen the existing cynicism and alienation among the populace. The very process of investigation, the public debate and scrutiny it inevitably sparks, and the eventual conclusion will collectively set powerful precedents. It will, for a significant period of time, define what is deemed acceptable and what is unequivocally unacceptable for those we entrust with the immense power of public office. The unfolding story of these investigations isn't a mere political spectacle or a fleeting news cycle. It is a profound and critical test. A test of the resilience and impartiality of our democratic institutions, a test of our collective commitment to transparency and accountability, and ultimately, a test of whether the foundational principles of selfless public service can truly withstand the immense pressures and temptations of power and money in modern politics. The results, whatever they may ultimately be, will send powerful ripples through the halls of Congress and resonate deeply in the minds of voters across the entire nation, inevitably shaping the expectations, the standards, and the very future for every politician who seeks to serve in the public arena. The question of what's about to happen isn't merely about one person's fate or one political career. It is fundamentally about the future trajectory and the enduring integrity of political leadership in America. The pressing questions surrounding political wealth, the intricate mechanisms of government investigations, and the relentless, often challenging, pursuit of true transparency are not isolated incidents. They are, in fact, fundamental threads woven into a much larger, more complex tapestry of how power truly operates in our nation, and how we, as a vigilant and engaged society, demand unwavering accountability from those who wield that power over our lives.